Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I wanted to do a planner chat and talk through some thoughts that I've been having for the last little while on whether I think it might be possible to downsize from my Hobonichi Cousin and my Traveler's Notebook as my main planning system to a Hobonichi A6 and the weekly supplement. As a disclaimer, I haven't made any actual decisions on this, of abandoning this system. It is working quite well for me, but I can see that it's starting to show some signs of being a little outdated as my own personal situation starts to change and simplify. And I think this whole thing started because I am using a blank insert as part of my system, and I'm coming to the end of this insert. So I will finish this insert before the year is up, which means I can either replace this insert if I want to continue with my system the same way that I've been doing for the last few years, or it gives me an opportunity to think about what I might change now that my life is starting to head in a different direction than it was when I last tweaked the system to work for my needs at the time. I don't have a lot planned. I think this is going to be one of those chatty, rambly, processing kind of videos. So feel free to grab yourselves a tea or a coffee or your favorite cozy beverage. I have a tea with me that I am drinking on the side, and grab your planners or a cozy activity, whatever you want to bring today to hang out with me while I share my thoughts on my planning system and how I think it might change. Before I get into it, a viewer in my video last week requested that I put together a list of all of my stationery essentials and different items that I talk about in my videos. So that is something that I am going to be working on in the back end. So if you have any questions about anything that I'm using, feel free to leave a comment down below and I will add that to my list when I put that together. But in the meantime, I wanted to address SLM613 was asking about. First of all, I wanted to say that I'm really excited that you picked up 2 Hobonichis to try out, and I hope that you have a lot of fun with your low stakes learning opportunity. And you also said that you were curious about my different pens, my metal ruler, and some of my cases. I will link some of the videos down below that talk about the pens that I use, and full disclosure, that collection has already changed a little bit. I have added a couple of new pens to my collection. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video on that if you're interested. And if you have any guesses as to what I have added to my collection, I would be so curious to hear about it. The main metal ruler that I use is this Traveler's Company brass ruler, and then the main pen cases that I use are the Superior Labor pen wallet and the Superior Labor utility case. I do have a video dedicated to each of these. I will link those as well in the description if you want to hear more. And my tiny scissors. So I got these scissors, I believe, from Amazon. So I will look them up again. So I'm not sure if they are still available. I'm pretty sure these are like meant to be sewing scissors. I will see if I can find it, and then I will add that to the description. And if you have any other questions about the other pens, like the non-fountain pens that I use, let me know and I will be happy to share more information about that as well. And when I put together that list, I'll also include like the brush markers that I use and the different highlighters and all of that fun stuff. So I will certainly put that together and maybe even film a video on that. If that's something that you'd be interested in seeing, let me know what you would like me to include. All right, so that is all that I have in terms of updates for this week. So let me tell you a little bit about where this is all coming from in the first place. When I first made my Hobonichi purchase last year, I talked about how the cousin was working really well for me, so I wanted to use that again. I also talked about how the Traveler's Notebook insert had been working really well for me, and I think I started this one kind of in the middle of the year. It looks like I started this one in July. So this blank insert is something that I started to use when I was still in my last role. And this was the only thing that remained from a bullet journal phase that I had gone through. So I was having a lot of trouble keeping track of all of the things that I needed to do in my life and with work. And Google Calendar and Notion just were not sticking with me. And I just was finding it really difficult to wrap my head around everything that I needed to do. And so I initially got into bullet journaling, and I got into that sort of art style bullet journaling, but nothing was really sticking from my bullet journal except for the running to-do list. So the act of writing out everything that I wanted to do, even the most minute task like text back this friend to respond to dinner plans. Anything that I needed to do would get written down, because I found that if I didn't write it down, it wouldn't happen. And that worked so well for me for years. Even when I started going to school and working full-time, this insert became even more crucial to my success, because it gave me the flexibility to note down larger things that I wanted to remember. So whenever I would start a new course, for example, I would mark down those pages with like a washi tape to allow me to refer back to them really easily. And then I would write down all of the assignments and papers and different tasks that needed to be done for that course. I would also write down the learning objectives so that I could always remind myself of what the purpose of the class was, especially when I was writing papers and things like that. And then for each of the week, I would use the 2-page spread, and I would have a list of tasks that needed to be done within that week. And that list could sometimes take up almost an entire page. And because there's so much confidential information mixed in here, I can't show you the pages themselves, but it really ranged from, like, sometimes I just had a few readings I needed to do and maybe a few small tasks that needed to be done. And I would even have little like checklists so I could remind myself if I needed to do 5 things that week for school, I could just slowly check them off as I did them. Same with work. If I was running a study and I had a number of interviews to analyze, I would be able to use this space to just create a little checklist that I could reference throughout the week. So what made this so key for me was that I could see the whole week, and so I would just have it open on my desk, and I would always be able to reference the things I needed to do, and I could check them off as they got done. It worked so well, and like I said, I would mix work things, school things, and I would also mix in life things. And because they were essentially, it was a blank insert, I never felt constrained to, if some days my task list was crazy long and then some days it was short, I never had to deal with having to make it fit within a structure, because I had tried to use pre-dated agendas before and it never worked. And when I would try bullet journaling and I would try to set up a week in advance, I would always have trouble fitting in things because different days had different amounts of things that needed to be done. And so I just found having a blank insert was really all that I needed. And I even stopped using the monthly insert that I used to have, because I realized that most of my major events, that especially if they involve other people, always tend to live in my digital calendar anyway. So when I had a monthly insert, I could never keep it up to date to my actual calendar, like my actual digital calendar, just because meetings always get moved around and changed and canceled and rescheduled. So the monthly calendar was not useful for me at all, because even if I tried to proactively fill things out, it would always change. But I find that by the time I'm sitting down to plan my week, most of the things that are supposed to happen that week are generally going to happen, because we're not looking out months in advance. We're really just looking out a week in advance. I learned through all of this that I'm a weekly planner. And as I mentioned, this was working great. I had no problems. The only system that I had was my traveler's notebook. And then I always had some kind of A5 type notebook to take notes for work. So whenever I was in a meeting or when I was in school and I needed to take notes from like a lecture or something like that, I would always use a notebook like this because I like having all of that space. The reason why I started to use the Cousin is because a few years went by and I started to realize that I would get to December, the end of the year, and I would have no recollection of what happened. I might remember a few major things like birthdays or holidays or travel, but all of those sort of small things that were going on in my life, I couldn't tell you anything about them. I just felt like I was losing track of time, and I had this desire to really get into more memory keeping. So when I initially got this Cousin, my thought was I was going to use this book for memory keeping. And very quickly, I realized how powerful the weekly inserts were for me. And I think I started out last year just doing memory keeping. Like I would keep the weeklies open on my desk, and as different events came throughout the day, like I would just log different events. And then when I felt like it, I might add some stickers or decoration, but that was mainly it. I still wasn't really using it for planning. I was mostly just using it for memory keeping. And then for the daily pages, I was trying to use it as like a commonplace kind of notebook. So if I got new pens or inks, I would throw them in here. If I found a new crochet pattern, I would copy it out in here. Recipes, things like that. So this was actually really meant to be a fun book, but very quickly I switched it over into being a much more functional tool. So my weeklies, at the end of the week, I will plan for the upcoming week, where I will highlight all of my set meetings that I know are coming up, and I will put some major things that I want to get done on the side here. And then just for fun, I usually log what I eat for lunch and dinner. As the week goes on, sometimes I add different events that happen and I want to remember. So that could be spending time with friends or date nights or movies that we're watching. It's not really a place that I feel pressured to capture every single detail. It's more like if a detail feels meaningful to me, even if it's large or small, I will scatter it throughout my week. And I find that doing that has allowed me to have that memory of what happened. So one of my favorite things to do is to flip through my previous pages and be able to see all of the things that have happened in the year so far. And same with last year. Every course I finished or every milestone I hit, I recorded that in my weekly spreads, and I just got so attached to it. So I fell really in love with the Cousin, and instead of having that separate notebook that I was using for taking notes in meetings and lectures and things like that, I started to use the Cousin's daily pages for doing that. So why I really liked this was I had enough space to take as many notes as I needed to, and it had like a built-in easy way for me to find things again. I would be able to use this date and use this yearly, I think it's called Calendex, and I would be able to put whatever topic was discussed here. It was almost like I was building this memory keeping / encyclopedia of that year. And I absolutely love that. Honestly, I just had such a great time with the cousin. So when it came time for me to start thinking about next year, what really struck me was the idea that as I get ready to finish school, I had a feeling that I was going to be traveling a little bit more. And with these 2 books, it gets heavy. And I was finding myself just craving something more portable. Originally, my thought was that I was going to keep using my I was going to keep using my traveler's notebook insert until this was finished, and I wasn't sure how long it would take me. So far, I think it'll take me about a year to use up this entire insert, so that is actually going to be ending soon. And I also knew that I was going to be having some pretty big life changes happening this year. So if all goes well, I will be finished school sometime at the end of the summer, early fall. And when I'm finished, I'm probably also going to start changing the proportion of my work from my old career towards this new career that I'm working towards. And as my life starts to simplify, I started to ask myself, is there an opportunity for my planning system to simplify as well? And when it was August of last year, and if you were in the Hobonichi preview frenzy, I was already thinking about what 2024 would look like when my life simplified, because I no longer had as many things to be juggling. And I thought that the A6 could be a really interesting option mainly because of its size, honestly. I know that these 2 books can fit very easily into my purse, not together, but I know like this could fit in my purse quite easily. This could fit in my purse quite easily. This cannot. So the only way I can really travel with the cousin is if I'm traveling with a backpack or a tote bag. It's starting to feel heavy. And with this insert coming to an end, I've really been asking myself, do I want to continue on with this same system next year where I'm using my cousin for really planning and work, if you're looking at the daily pages as a built-in notebook? And then my running to-do list is happening in this insert. So I do have a desire to downsize. And some of the things that I've been thinking about are, what if I continue to use the weekly as my planning and a little bit of memory keeping, exactly as the way I had. And then I use the daily pages as a place for a running to-do list and then notes. I could definitely do that. I've already been using in my weeklies, I've already been using this side, you can't see. I've already been using this side section to capture some of those main tasks that I used to capture in my traveler's notebook insert. Just because the amount of things that I need to do now, it's less little things for school and it's more easily contained. Basically, I haven't run out of room yet. I know in the past this would not have been enough room for me to list out all the things that I needed to get done for the week, but I've been experimenting a little and I am finding that I can, for the most part, fit most of the things that I need, the major things, not the little things like respond to this person, which I think could live in the dailies, but the big pieces. So I think getting another cousin is a real possibility. The only thing that's really holding me back is the fact that it's such a big book. And I already try to keep it as lean as possible. I have been adding more stickers into the weekly section, but I don't usually add a lot of things into the daily pages because I'm not using them for memory keeping. I'm mainly using them to take notes. So they're very boring. And I think that is actually one of the things that stands out to me is, in a way, I feel like I'm kind of underutilizing this book. I don't even use the monthly calendar that much. I'm using it a little bit for YouTube planning, but I think I'm really only using it in that way because if I didn't, I wouldn't be using it at all. I don't really know that this is necessary to use an entire calendar in that way for YouTube planning. I do feel like this is almost too much book for me. And while I absolutely adore the weeklies, I really also want something that I can put in my purse and take with me. And another thing that I learned when I was trying to use my traveler's notebook as my primary planning system is I really didn't like having the different inserts. So I love having this separate insert as a to-do list, but when I had the monthly, I didn't enjoy flipping between two different things. So what I really like about this 2-book system is I can have my weekly open on my desk all day and have it visible so I can constantly reference when my meetings are coming up, what's going on, and just have like a really nice overview to look at. And then I keep my to-do list open on my desk because that is something that I'm also referencing all day long, and I'm just checking things off as I'm doing them and just making sure that I get everything done that I was hoping to do. So I really like having multiple things open on my desk. It's just easier for me to operate, which is why the A6 feels like a very interesting option. Last year when I made my Hobonichi purchase, I bought this A6 and this weekly supplement with the intention of trialing it out as my main planning system for my internship. I had originally intended on keeping that completely separate from work and the rest of my school. So I'm doing a course right now for school, and I'm also doing an internship in order for me to graduate. So I was going to treat this as my internship book, and I was planning on using the weekly supplement to track down all of my meetings related to my internship, especially because I have to track my hours for it anyway. And then I was going to use this to take notes during my meetings. The reason why I pivoted away from this is because as soon as I tried out this weekly supplement, I immediately felt like it was just way too small. Like I was so used to having all this room. I was so used to having all of this room in my Cousin. And I loved having the half an hour increments. So if I have a meeting and it's only half an hour, I can just grab my Tombow marker and highlight it out, block off that time, and it's just really easy for me. Like everything just feels really easy. And here, you don't get a square for every half hour, obviously, because it's so much smaller. And it's a lot harder to block off half hour meetings. So I abandoned this very quickly. And the other thing was I was finding, maybe it's just because I'm new and I'm still learning and I'm a student, when it comes to meetings, I needed way more room than this to take notes. I ended up getting a A6 notebook, and I was using that to take notes. And I've already gone through like 2 or 3 A6 notebooks. So I'm currently using a B6 notebook because I had already had one of these lying around because I was curious about the B6 size. And even this is going pretty quickly. So when it comes to taking notes in my meetings, Ironically, I think the A5 size might actually be the better size for me. But whatever book I use to take notes for my meetings has to be completely separate from the rest of my life, because I have to lock it up and keep that information confidential, and I need to really protect that information. So I found myself, once I realized that, I really didn't want to use my Hobonichis anymore for it, because I want to be able to keep my Hobonichis out all day long. I want to be able to play around in them and flip through them. And I don't want to have to face the potential of having to like shred them one day if I want to destroy any of the confidential information. So I'm not going to feel too bad if I have to shred this book and all the contents in it. But I am going to feel really bad if I have to shred an A6. And so at the beginning of this year, I decided to pivot, and I turned my A6 into my fun journal, and it's mainly just been a place for me to play with inks and just document thoughts around inks and just have fun doing sketches and have this as a creative space. And I really have enjoyed it a lot. So much so that I have really fallen in love with this size. And there is a part of me that is constantly wondering, like, could I downsize to this next year when I don't have as many different things to be keeping track of as I have needed to in the Cousin. And so that leads me to a little experiment that I've been playing around with. So what I ended up doing was I went back into this weekly supplement, and a lot of this is actually made up information because I knew that I was going to be sharing this on YouTube. So just know that any of these names here are made up. What I really did was I looked at my Cousin for these weeks, what I had documented, and I essentially tried different ways to bring over the information while protecting the identities of the people that I have meetings with, just to get a feel for what it could be like if I were to downsize from this weekly size to having my schedule in this small insert. So I did a few, and I don't have a conclusion yet, honestly. I think I'm at a point now where I've seen that it is possible that I could use this. It definitely takes a little bit more work and thinking. Like, I find here the hours of the day are all posted here. It's just really easy to access. My brain just sees this page and it feels like a copy of my Google Calendar, and it just works really well for me to be able to see like what I have going on in that week at a glance, and I love it. I think this would take me a little bit of getting used to, but it's not terrible. So what I've been doing is I saw Himiwari Stationery, I hope I pronounced that right, recently shared a video where she talked about how she's been using her weekly supplement. And that really inspired me to take mine out again and see if I could maybe make it work. So that's what I did. I just colored in the boxes to represent the meeting that I had. And I continued on with my color coding to be able to give me a visual cue for what task belongs to what. Although I think moving into next year, I do think this is going to simplify anyway. And then I did experiment a little bit with adding in a few things related to like the way I would use my Cousins weekly, where if I wanted to note down a couple of things for like memory keeping's sake, that's what I would do here. And I actually ended up having a lot of empty space because I think since I'm using the bottom here for tracking my lunch and dinners, I'm finding that if I wanted to do that here, I could. I think I have enough room to do it. And if I don't want to, I actually have a lot more room than I thought. So again, I don't have any major conclusions yet, but it's not looking completely unreasonable to consider using something like this next year. I really like how portable this is. I really like that it can fit, like it can tuck in really nicely into this book. And I did a little experiment with what it might look like if I were to use these daily pages as my to-do list. So on this one, I have all of my meetings lined up here. And then here I just ignore the timeline altogether, and I experimented with just putting in the meetings that I wanted to remember, and then having a to-do list here versus a to-do list here, and just having enough room here for like journaling or notes for meetings, like short notes if I need to take short notes. And it would definitely be a change, because the main thing I would lose is this weekly view to-do list that I've been using for the last few years. And because this has been working for me, there's a part of me that feels hesitant to walk away from something that I know has helped me stay organized and get things done when I say I'm going to do them. But I think the principle of being able to have a space to write down what I want to do for that day can be achieved here. And I'll still have that weekly overview of everything that I want to get accomplished here. And I even have tried a couple times to write down some key things here. And obviously there's not as much room, but I do write small. So I am able to fit quite a lot of stuff on this side view here. So it's just something I'm thinking about. And the best part is it actually fits. It could even be tucked into my traveler's notebook. So next year, if I wanted to keep my traveler's notebook for my health and wellness tracker, if I were to use a weeks again, and my sticker release book, which I use all the time, then I could also, if I wanted to go traveling and I didn't want to bring my 1 page a day, I could just bring my traveler's notebook plus my weekly supplement. And I did look into the weekly vertical inserts for the traveler's notebook, because that was something that I was seriously considering as well. But I don't like that they are in separate books, and I really like having my whole year in one book, which is why I love the Cousin, I love the A6, and I don't mind this weekly supplement. I used to think that if Hobonichi came out with a Cousin in an A6 size, so including the weekly view integrated into this book, I thought that would be my ideal. But I actually think the fact that this is a separate notebook is not a bad thing, because I can keep this open on my desk and it doesn't even take up that much room, but I can get an overview for everything that is going on for my week and still have this open so that I can, have my to-do list here. And so all of a sudden this is open on my desk, as opposed to this plus this, which just feels a lot more manageable to me. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm thinking I might go when I finish this insert. I think it's going to happen in the next month or so. Maybe I'll take that as an opportunity to try this out, because I'm so close to finishing this insert that I just want to get to the end of it at this point. And at the same time, I also really love flipping through my weeklies for my Cousin. I don't really care that much about the dailies in the Cousin because I'm just using it for taking notes. So there's nothing really exciting about it. It's just purely functional. And if that's the case, maybe I can just get a blank A5 notebook, or maybe a day free if I wanted to use this size for taking meeting notes next year. So anyway, those are the things that I'm thinking about. I would love to hear your thoughts. Obviously, this is a very premature conversation to be having because we're not even halfway through 2024 and I'm already talking about 2025. But as I mentioned, this all kind of got started because one of my, main notebooks is about to run out. And I suppose this could be a result of how I've been feeling lately. So once again, my health and wellness has really been helpful for reflection. I've been having these thoughts of feeling like overwhelmed by the size of my traveler's notebook and cousin, even though the system itself is working perfectly fine. I've just been feeling overwhelmed, and I've just been thinking like, I want to simplify and I want to optimize for portability as opposed to like maximum functionality. And when I look at like how I've been feeling in the last few weeks, it's been a lot of feelings of like feeling triggered, feeling anxious, unmotivated, unfocused, frustrated, powerless. There's a lot of, out of control kind of feelings, or like feelings of fear. And it's gotten me wondering if maybe this is me trying to take back some feeling of control or find a way to combat like some of these negative feelings. So just thinking about it is occupying my mind, and I suppose that distraction isn't really a bad thing, but I think it is important for me to take note of what my headspace is at right now and what could be driving these feelings of discontentment. And it is possible that I'm just feeling like I'm trying to compensate for something else, and that's why I'm going to stay the course. So I'm going to continue using this system until something convinces me otherwise, because it is working for now. When this insert runs out, maybe I will experiment with using this A6 as my to-do list instead of here. And perhaps I'll continue using the cousin for notes and the weeklies, because I would love to have a finished year of my weeklies. I just love flipping through them. So since I've already started, I'd like to finish. And then I feel like my weekly supplement experiment is done. I have used it a little bit for this week, but I'm using real information, so that's why I'm not showing it. But I think this something I would be interested with this is if I fill this up with washi tape and stickers, like how fluffy is this going to get? Because it is thinner, which means that I think I'm less scared to fluff it up. But if it stops fitting in here or it just gets a little out of control, then that might make me not want to use it. So I still have some experimenting to do, but I wanted to share my early thoughts with you anyway and have an opportunity to get your input and your feedback. If you have any ideas or any other things that I may be missing or some context that might be helpful to consider, I would love to hear it. Maybe there are some other options that I'm not even considering. I do think I'm not into getting this B6 size. I'm so used to the A5 for taking notes that I'm pretty comfortable with maybe sticking with this size for meetings, because I go through these books too quickly, honestly. And I will also admit there is an element of emotional attachment, and I do have an emotional attachment to my traveler's notebook. I recently swapped the cover from my camel to this dark brown, just because I wanted to give this dark brown a chance to wear in. But I do love a lot about this. Like, I love that it has my sticker release paper. I have loved having a blank notebook to play around in. So I'm also like, do I feel ready to get rid of this? Because in theory, I could probably have my health and wellness, like these could be my books for next year, which also feels really nice to have a smaller set of books. So anyway, I think that's all that I have for you today. That was a lot of rambling. No real conclusions, I guess. Hopefully you found some of this interesting, and I would really love to hear your thoughts. So please feel free to leave a comment, and I look forward to having a conversation with you in the comment section. If you're still here, thank you so much for being here, for all of your lovely engagement and conversation. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you soon in the next video. Bye!